Hello there, and welcome to another of Ms.RedNebula's Game Dev in Progress Diaries. As I said in the last episode, at first these are going to be mostly me following along with tutorials as I start to learn, but as I go, then it'll be more and more things that I'm creating for myself. I also wanted to bring up that it's not just me doing this stuff, it's actually myself and my husband are both very interested in game design. But as my background is more in the art and the programming side of things, you're probably mostly going to hear from me. I'll sneak him in every once in a while if I can catch him. I wanted to talk briefly about why Unity. I mean, why is this the engine that I decided to start learning? And am I ever going to try and work with Unreal Engine or Godot, I think is how it's pronounced, G-O-D-O-T, or any of the other ones? I'm sure I probably will eventually. The reason why I centered on Unity is, for one thing, because there are several games out there that are games that I really enjoy that were made in Unity. For example, Subnautica, which I'm kind of obsessed with, and Ori and the Blind Forest, Firewatch, Slime Rancher. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that there's a whole long list of them. The thing is you're never really going to know that they're made in Unity unless you look, because they don't have that logo at the start of the game. I think the reason why there is some negativity towards Unity is because you see a lot of beginner games released they have the Unity logo at the start of the game. Because if you're not using a paid version of Unity, you're going to see that logo at the start of the game. There's nothing wrong with Unity as an engine, and to be honest, I'm really enjoying working with it, so I don't see any reason to deviate from that now. But I do like learning new things, and there's every possibility that as I go on, if this seems like it's something that I'm just having a great time with, which so far I am, I'll probably play around with some of the other engines that are out there and see what I can do in them too. But for the moment, I'm sticking with Unity because it is a lot easier to focus and learn a single engine than it is going to be to try and learn C# and C++ and the various different ways that different engines have their programming done, or blueprints like in Unreal Engine. I think Godot has its own type of programming language. It's really kind of better to stick with one thing until you're pretty good at it, and then you can branch out a little bit more than that. Like, if you've ever learned programming languages, it's not like every language you learn is a completely new experience. There's a lot of things that are common across all languages, but it's almost like learning different dialects of a language. So if you go from, say, Arizona, where I live, to New York City, it's still English, but there's a lot that's different about it. Travel to England, where my husband's from, and suddenly it's almost a different language, but still not quite. You can understand most of what people are saying, but every once in a while they'll just start talking and you're just like, oh, I know this language, I truly do, but what? Just a random note, my husband's been here in the States for well over a decade now, and we still to this day will run across phrases that either I'll say and he'll just look at me like, what? Or he'll say, and I'm like, oh, there's a Britism I've never heard before. So, as I think the phrase goes, as two countries divided by a common language. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but of course I've also been playing some stuff here in the background, so what is all of this? This is part of the tutorial that I had started following last week when I put out that video. This was an RPG tutorial made by Brackus and Sebastian Legge. As I said, I figured that I'd probably be working on it for at least the next week, and that's still holds true. I think that where I'm at right now, I will probably finish it by the time I get to the next dev diary that I do. The stuff that's going on in the background is following along with Sebastian Legge's half of the tutorial, where he has us building the armor for the character and also the clothing for the character. So this was a little more practice in Blender and learning a few new tricks and techniques and stuff. There's a couple of things that I'd probably do different, mainly that he did an interesting technique where he used these things called shape keys to make different parts of the body more slender so that they wouldn't clip through as you were animating the parts of the armor and the parts of the clothing on top. I don't think that I'd do that because then that just means there's a lot of geometry that's there but you'd never see. Like, you're never going to see this character running around naked. They're always either going to have clothing or they're going to have armor on. More than likely it'd be better to omit that interior geometry altogether, but I thought that it was interesting learning about the shape keys because there's other stuff that could be used for them. The thing that popped into my mind was doing some kind of a transformation from one state to another, which is probably a little ambitious for right now, but it is something to keep in mind for future projects. So anytime that you go through a tutorial, you're always going to be picking up and learning things that you maybe didn't even realize were going to be a part of that tutorial, but it's still useful to know. So here we are back in Unity and back in the actual tutorial that I was working on. As you can see that I've got my little character here has been imported into the game. He looks naked right now, but when the game starts, he will actually have the clothing on him as a default. And there was also some kind of funny stuff when I was going to import him. I believe it's probably because of the settings that I've got set up in Blender for Planet Coaster, where Unity didn't quite like the scale settings, and I ended up with Godzilla, basically. So it wasn't that hard to figure that one out. It was just a matter of adjusting the scale of the imported object and got him working. So let's have a look at what he looks like in-game. And here we go. Like I said, the character's got his clothes on in the game, and he walks and runs around. Imported all of the animations and stuff. I forgot to mention there was also a camera movement where you use the A and the D keys to go around him, and I think I mentioned in the last video how we've got the scroll in and out so you can get a little bit closer and see what he's doing. Also got the pieces of armor are sat here on the floor, so let's go over and grab them. Here is an inventory screen, and clicking on the inventory piece equips it. Now, the inventory pieces are replacing the items that he had on, but you've also got, it's just a hotkey that you use to unequip items in this one, but as soon as they're unequipped, then you go back to having the clothing on before. You can pick and choose what armor that you want to wear, and that's that. I know the animation's a little bit wonky, like he looks almost like he's sliding around, but this is, again, I'm just following along with the way that the tutorial is. There's a few things that I would definitely do a little bit differently if this was me trying to make a game. I'd probably make either he's going to be running a lot faster than this, or the running animation would just be a little bit less extreme, or I'd just be using a walking animation to bring him around like that. There's also things that you just kind of, like, as you're going through a tutorial, maybe, yeah, you are following along, but you notice something's just not quite right. So there was a bug that I picked up on, whereby if you try to unequip items but your inventory was completely full, the items would just disappear. So it's always kind of fun. I've actually playtested a couple of games before where I got to be in that situation of looking for bugs and suggesting them back to the devs. So it's something that I quite enjoy trying to break games, I guess. I can only assume that's going to be a useful skill for what I'm doing here. And really for this week, that's about all I've got. But it was quite a bit of behind the scenes work to get all of this stuff up and running, so I'm pretty proud of where it's at. Didn't get any work done on the sample stuff that I was working on last week, the pinball stuff, but I believe after I'm done with this tutorial, then that's where I'm going to start concentrating my energy, to see what I can make out of that. And I know the next things in this tutorial is going to be making an enemy and doing some combat mechanics, sword and shield. There'd be a bit more, but I think we're getting relatively close to the end of this. Alright, so since you stuck around to the end of the video, here's a little bit of a sneak peek for the next thing that I'm working on for Planet Coaster. Since I just finished the wolves, I figured I would go ahead and make something that I've always wanted in the game. Obviously, he's not anywhere quite near finished just yet, but I need my werewolves, guys. I really do. I love werewolves, so you guys get a werewolf because I love them. So that's it for this diary. Feel free to like, comment, or subscribe if you'd like to follow along, and check out my Patreon for sneak peeks and other perks. A big thank you to my current patrons. That's all for now. Bye!